Anyway, what are we going to talk about this time? A bit of health,
Yeah, I think health is topical at the moment.
very topical. So we've gone through the pandemic, and then now we're going through a flu thing, and they haven't got enough staff, and big time changes in the government levels. So there's lots to talk about there.
I don't necessarily think that a lot of the changes that they're proposing to make things better are making things better.
No, but they've even admitted to that. I mean, if you're talking about the merging them all into one big one, I believe the minister's saying this might take a few years before we realise and get our benefits from it. Because, in my view, the place is in crisis right now. They haven't got enough staff.
With regards to the DHB merging into one, the consultants did say it should merge into 6, not 1. I still think it's a bit of a wrong idea.
And what better example than the Auckland example, the super city, where they merged all those councils together. And were you here then? I think you were.
Yes.
Yeah. And everyone said, no, that's not going to work, that's not going to work. And quite frankly, it doesn't work because they're going to say, we're going to save money doing this. But I think it's our current administration within council. That's another discussion for another day. But what we're saying is merging into one and having it all run centrally, it's not going to be an easy place to go.
At the bare minimum, having an understanding of how the rural world works versus the city central, it should be addressed. And I just don't think one DHB is going to be able to. You'll have someone talking about the needs of a rural community fighting with someone who's talking about the city needs. Unless they can find a unique someone who's been in all the sectors and is willing to play mediator, which I just don't think they're going to find.
I've got a friend at the high level in the local DHB, and he's from Australia. And I think what he comes in with a fresh perspective, plus lots of experience in larger hospitals, and I think that's quite helpful. But again, he's not at the very top of the echelon, and he will now be a small fish in a big pond, and they're throwing all the fish bowls into the pond, which someone's going to get swallowed up.
Why has he moved from Australia to New Zealand?
I think just opportunity. Also, there was nothing available over there at that particular time, and I've seen his CV. He's actually been in many different locations. And I just think he's just looking for that extra bit of experience. And of course, he's a big fish he was. And he managed 2 DHBs. It comes under his jurisdiction. But putting all that aside, the controversial thing is the merging it and making it a bigger one. But the other one is having a separate authority, health authority, just for Maori. Do you think that's the right thing to do?
Not at all. Not at all. And having an understanding and an acceptance of a culture is one thing, but I mean, separating us and them as in New Zealand people just doesn't make sense. You know, you can accept that they have certain ways of doing medicine and doing things and incorporating that in medicine education. That's definitely should be a thing, but trying to separate us versus them and then splitting our very scarce resources to have that happen just doesn't make sense.
I've got to say I do agree. Now, what they say is that the Maori need special attention because they got special needs and they've been neglected. Now, being neglected, I think that's a bit generous. I think they have special needs. And that is, you have to take the health to them rather than they have to go to health. I think that's probably what it's about. Because I think when I heard that we would let them down in terms of the Maoris down in terms of getting the vaccination, I understand that was the situation. I couldn't work out what we'd done wrong. And I understand it was because we didn't take it to them and provide it, like spoon feed it to them because that's where they needed that special attention.
I think it's more a conversation about trust. The DHB and the medical facilities have often sort of had their own pre-existing network that's excluded pretty much anyone who didn't put up their hand and want to find out the information. In saying that, inviting them to join the existing network is probably would have done a lot more good than spoon feeding them. They're grown people. They care about their children just the same as all of us. I think if we had just taken the time to include them in the implementation, things would have gone a lot better.
Yeah, consultation seems to be the big one that they seem to be concerned about. Hey, can you move your mic? It's going to be a bit noisy. Just bring it to the edge of the table. Yeah, because you're a bit faint, I think. Sometimes the screen doesn't go to you. So I actually do think there's some areas that we should explore in terms of that, but should they get more special treatment than other people? My personal view is no. I think we're all one nation and we all should be treated much the same. Some people provided with privileges, I just don't think if it's distinguished on the basis of or discriminated on the basis of race, I just don't think that's right.
And I agree. And I think illnesses don't discriminate who they attack. Neither should we for prevention.
So let's go back to the other one. The DHB's emerging into one. So there's these separate identities now are going to be just led by one identity. In theory, that sounds like it's going to save you a lot of money. You don't need all these HR departments because there's only going to be one now. You don't need all these marketing operations and those special operation facilities because it's all going to be under one umbrella now. That makes, in theory, good nation. But as I mentioned before, Auckland City Council is a good example how it didn't work. Explain to me why you think it hasn't worked or why you don't think it will work.
It doesn't address the fundamental problem that all the other DHBs had, which was accountability and responsibility. And we're not really a country that allows for mistakes. And I think, which is why during all this transition period, so many consultants have been brought on board. No one's willing to just say, this is the situation, here are our options, let's make a choice and see where it takes us. It took them a very long time to get here, and they didn't actually follow with what the expensive consultants ended up saying anyway. And government or whomever needs to give these governing institutions the power to get it wrong. Because if they can admit that they've got it wrong, you can pivot 200% faster. And I've seen it because I lived in the Middle East, and everything's sort of cut and paste and go with the flow. And if they see something isn't working, someone says, okay, sorry, slicha, let's fix it. And we move slow.
So let's explore what that's fascinating to me. So we should be giving the people the power to say they've got it wrong.
I think up until this point, and probably still, these boards are retirement plans for a lot of people. You come in there and that's the rest of your career. This is where you end up. And it's a great goal to strive for, but we really should be introducing and encouraging the people who are in the slums, in the on the front, if you want to do a World War II reference, who know what's going on, who see the shortages and the problems that these day-to-day workers are facing. And they can probably come up with the best solutions because they have to come up with those solutions every day.
So I don't know if just to go back to what you're saying now, can I guess what this is? What you're saying, and actually I'm fascinated with this because I'm critical of like the local council and other government departments, is that the bureaucrats, the public servants, are not allowed to make a mistake. So they don't make mistakes, but do you know how they do it? They engage consultants to make a recommendation. And then once the consultants made the recommendation, they get that bit of paper and they put it in their drawer, and then they may decide to follow the consultant's recommendation. Then, if it comes up that was a mistake, they go, that consultant made the mistake, not me. Mm-hmm. But my argument is, why do we pay these people enormous salaries because they're experts? Then they go and employ another expert to actually do the work or to give the advice and do it again. Now, is this what you're saying? Give them the power to say, I got it wrong?
I think there's nothing wrong with getting consultants on board. But for any decision making that happens, you need your own involvement. And if they're trying to avoid accountability, then they probably try and know very little about what's going on. So I don't see how they can possibly be the decision makers who come up with the solutions if they're not even willing to work with the consultants in that moment, or to work with those who are dealing with the problems day to day and ask them the right questions. If you're going to hire a consultant, you're asking them to provide you additional intellectual support. It should still be your decision. It's your position in
Well, that's what they do. They say, this is my decision, but I want your report first. So that justifies what they've done. So they'll say, okay, I've decided to, like Minister Little did, I've decided to make one large identity. But he didn't do it, did he? But what he probably did, get a consultant into place and who recommended it, and go, there you go, I'm going to just follow consultant B's bloody recommendation.
I think, and I could be wrong because I've never been in the rooms when the decisions are getting made, but everyone sits in a room and says, well, this is what the consultant has told us. What do you think? X. And then X turns, well, I think this, what about you, Y? And then it gets around circle until you get back to that person, and no decision gets made until someone gets pushed by the people to make a decision.
Now go back, do you remember the exact words you said? I forget these things, but you said something, so if they have to engage a consultant, it should be for what? Additional services? What was it? Additional skills that they haven't got in-house?
Yeah. If you're planning to do this big endeavor, the decision or the idea should still be yours. You shouldn't just be doing a discovery session. You should have in the back of your mind, this is the goal that I'm trying to achieve. Then you hire experts or consultants who can help facilitate that goal. You can't just be, hey, this isn't working, please go analyze it. If you're in that position, you should go in and figure it out and ask the right people and talk to everyone and find what the problem is yourself.
Now that's easy. I think that's really easy. I mean, anybody with half a brain could probably sit at the top level of an organisation and go, righto, now let's look at, merging all this together. I'll get a consultant to do it, and I'll maybe get two consultants to make analysis and then come up with recommendations. And anyone can do that. But what I am upset about is the people that make those decisions are paid enormous money. I think it was Watercare guy was on $800,000 a year, nearly $1 million a year, to get consultants and to make recommendations to him to give it. Yeah, I'll go with that. Now that doesn't take a lot of brain power. But why do we pay for experts? We pay them big money because they've got the knowledge, the experience, been around the block, and by God, we make sure that they're qualified for them to go off and buy the exact advice that we are seeking from them. They go off and buy it somewhere else and sell it back to us again and charge us again.
Well, I guess you need a different type of consultant coming in. If you were looking into making changes into the medical field, there's a lot of probably medicine terms and terminologies that you won't know. It's not a logistics problem. It's not a infrastructure problem. That's probably one of the consultants you'd have on board, someone who can explain to you why this is needed here and this is needed.
Yeah.
When I'm talking you hire the right consultants, you're not hiring decision makers, you're hiring people to give you that information that you don't have because it's not your area of expertise.
When I was in council, it was interesting to see who was being hired and what they generally are. There's a myriad of consultancy businesses out there that are sucking the juice out of the trough, the government coppers. And that's where they lean into because they're usually the executive who hires them are familiar with them, and believe me, they generally come from that organisation and have been engaged by the DHB, and on the basis they might say, I'm going to hire this consultant because that will save us a fortune of money because we've got the person right in-house. And that person learns very quickly, don't make a decision.
Mm-hmm.
You make a decision, but based on the consultancy case business. And they love it back at the headquarters of the consultancy because they're making money two ways.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And it's not their fault because government head department made it that way.
Who pays? You and me.
We do.
Be interesting to know if Filton Hogan and a few of those big places operate, at that executive level. They probably do employ consultants for specialised work, but I guarantee they're a bit more leaner on allowing their executives to go and engage them willy-nilly.
Yeah, exactly. And usually at the executives who are requesting that additional support is in areas that they wouldn't otherwise know. But for the most part, they know how to ask the right questions, ask the right people the right questions, figure out what you can do within the budget and within the timeline. It's the very core basis of anyone trying to make changes like this.
What qualifies you to give that advice? Have you worked on a large corp?
I've worked in logistics, and I've worked in we've worked in a few large corporations as part of the administration and the executive work that we do. And you can see who knows what they're doing and who doesn't. They have a different sort of swagger in how they communicate.
A swagger.
Well,
I like it.
It's sort of like blood in the water for the sharks. You can see who doesn't know what they're doing, and private field consultants are paid to see that. And they've done nothing wrong. They've just seen what's in front of them and adjusted.
Just before we wind up, I want to go back to where we started. You're not happy with the rearrangement of our medical system, this is our big news right now. What would you have done? Would you have left it as it was?
Definitely not. I do think it needed change, but I would have listened to the consultants when they said there should be 6, not 1, not 27. And I think it just needs to account for the fact that different areas of New Zealand have different requirements. The colder you get, the more hypothermia-related incidents you're going to have to take into account. Big cities have more car crashes. Farms have harder distribution problems. How do you get the medicine to these people if they're so far away and, might live alone? Exactly. And like I said, it's going to take a very unique individual who's going to be able to play mediator to everything that's going on and not let anyone slip through the cracks. But I do think having one is going to result in that, because no one person can, take care of absolutely everybody. At least with 6 as well, you had a way for the boards to govern each other, to say, hey, actually this isn't correct. The other 4 or 5 of us kind of agree that this is not how you should be.
Good point, because it's like competition. If one of the boards perform better than the others, it's something for them to aspire to get up to that level. But again, as you just pointed out, and I thought that was one of your wise things, is that different locations, because the boards were located at different locations, have different needs. And of course the cost would be different in accordance with those particular needs.
Yeah, well, performance metrics will be dependent on the board itself, but it's not that you're trying to have the 6 compete against each other. You're going to make sure that the 6 take care of each other and see that no one individual or one group of people is kind of, I'm not going to say ruining their peoples, but making it harder instead of easier for...
I do like competition. I think it's very healthy for our society. And if they're any different, they shouldn't. Any final words from you?
I wouldn't call it competition. I'd call it collaboration. I think if someone is in a equal state to call someone wrong, it solves a lot of problems.
Sure does. I've been in a senior role when I used to call my colleague who had a similar senior role in another end of the country and saying, what would you do now? Yeah, Max, why don't you try this? I tried that a while back and this happened. Yeah. And I thought that was good. Collaboration.
Well, with one DHB head, that person, again, would have to be okay with their subordinates calling them out. And not everyone will be okay, because that's just the nature of leadership. And my staff, if I make sure my staff tell me if I'm being wrong. I let them call me a dumbass for 24 hours if they correctly call it out.
You're far from a dumbass. More words of wisdom we've just had, folks, from Elina, and I just find it delightful. And she's an amazing girl. All right, see you next week.
See you.